We are continuing our coverage of the Texas power outage. There's been a lot of finger pointing for more than a week now when it comes to fossil fuels, wind turbines, deregulation, and preparedness. Here to provide some insight into what happened and where the state goes from here is Carey King. He is an energy systems researcher and assistant director of the Energy Institute at UT. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so concerning the Texas blackouts, what did you take away from Governor Abbott's speech and the Democratic response?
Well, the big takeaways are they both recognize the severity of the event, and they both recognize the need to weatherize and pay for this one way or the other. The governor even suggesting that the state would pay for the weatherization. So that was key. I think the main difference was that Representative Howard was maybe a bit more self-reflective and thinking a bit more of the entire energy system within Texas and how it's regulated by pointing to the Public Utility Commission and Railroad Commission as places to look for answers, aside from only looking at ERCOT, who is not a government agency, but is essentially does what it is mandated to do at the behest of government agencies.
Today, ERCOT explained the steps that they took before and during the widespread outages. What factors do you think played a role in millions of Texans losing power? Let's kind of go over that.
Right. Well, ERCOT essentially solved job number one, which is never let the grid go completely dark. They did it in quite difficult situations. But ultimately, when they ask a day ahead for every generator, how much power can you provide me tomorrow at each 15-minute interval of the day, they're trusting that those power plants can deliver that amount of power at that hour of the day. And the market is set up for that particular sequence to occur. So in this sense, they trusted that those power plants could provide what they claimed. But ultimately, we have no verification process to know the weatherized status of power plants. So as Ronald Reagan often said in denuclearization with the Soviet Union, trust but verify. We've got the trust part. Now we're working on the verify.
State lawmakers are holding emergency hearings tomorrow about the energy failures. What does the public still need to know? What questions should officials be asking?
We can ask if some power plants were actually prepared. Did they weatherize and did they weather the storm? Some power plants might have weatherized and not weathered the storm, so to say. On the other hand, there could be power plants that did not use weatherization procedures and investments, and maybe they worked and maybe they didn't. So we need to know the different types of characteristics of the power plants. That helps us determine what worked and what didn't work in terms of an engineering type process that will now go on to hopefully weatherize these power plants. And it's different across each type of technology, as was mentioned by both the governor and Representative Howard.
Briefly, what steps should be taken immediately? What investment should be made?
I think Governor Abbott stressed the step of giving customers certainty on how this is going to affect their power bills. The $9,000 per megawatt hour maximum price that can be set, that essentially can be reached in the wholesale market, that is there to incentivize power generation investments and demand side investments to meet peak demands. It's not there to punish consumers. So in this sense, we've reached that number, but for the wrong reason, and customers are reasonably worried.
Okay.
So one thing is to address that to make sure that this doesn't affect customers again. So that, as well as investigate just the process and the steps that went forward and determine who's in charge of verifying power plant preparedness.
All right. Carey King with the Energy Institute at UT, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us tonight. We'll be right back.
Thank you.